Shockingly, just because she dared to protect a strange little girl from the cold slap of a flight attendant right in the middle of first class, that impoverished woman never imagined she had unwittingly stepped straight into the blade of America's most notorious underworld. Can you even imagine a single mother, homeless and drifting in an old beat-up car with her 6-year-old son, constantly hungry and freezing, yet courageously stepping in to shield the daughter of the most powerful mafia boss in the country? In just a few short hours on that fateful flight, everything flipped upside down. From the humiliation of being live-streamed to millions, threatened with being kicked off the plane by airport security, to being hunted by Mafia hitmen the moment the wheels touch down. But the most jaw-dropping part isn't the heart-pounding chases through the freezing New York night. It's the moment that powerful man looked at her and whispered, "Emily, all these years." Could a lightning strike love truly ignite between a guilt-ridden mafia don and the poorest woman he's ever met? And would that love be strong enough to protect all four of them from the guns already aimed in the darkness? Stay with Alex Truths right now, because the next true story will keep you glued to the screen. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. My name is Emily Harper, and on that cold December morning in 2024, as I clutched my thin coat around my shivering shoulders at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, I never imagined how one flight could shatter the fragile walls I had built around my broken life. I was 28 years old, but the endless nights sleeping in my beat-up old Ford in grocery store parking lots, the gnawing hunger that left me thin and malnourished, the constant wind cutting through threadbare clothes during those long Illinois winters, they had aged me far beyond my years. My face was pale from lack of proper food, my hands chapped and rough from waitressing double shifts at a rundown diner in a small town outside Joliet. My 6-year-old son, little Tommy, was the only light in my world, but even providing for him felt impossible sometimes. We were flying to New York on the cheapest coach tickets I could scrape together with tips and a little help from a church charity, hoping to stay with a distant cousin who might offer us a couch for a while. The terminal was a whirlwind of holiday travelers, lights twinkling overhead, announcements echoing through the vast halls of O'Hare. I had just settled Tommy in our economy seats near the back when he wandered off, as curious 6-year-olds do, drawn toward the brighter lights of the forward cabin. Panic gripped my heart like ice as I hurried after him, my worn sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. That's when I saw her, a beautiful little girl, no more than 8 years old, sitting all alone in seat 2A of first class. She was impeccably dressed in a soft pink coat with a fur-trimmed hood, her fair skin glowing under the cabin lights, her dark hair neatly braided. In her lap, she held a popular American Girl doll, the kind with the matching outfits that I could only dream of affording for a child. And beside her was a small backpack, embroidered with the Chicago Bears logo, stuffed with what looked like brand new coloring books and a tablet in a protective case. Her name, I would learn later, was Sophia Moretti. But in that moment, she was just a vulnerable child, sitting quietly with wide, innocent eyes, waiting for the plane to fill. Then came the flight attendant, Brittany Thompson, a tall woman in her mid-30s with a sharp uniform and an even sharper expression. She towered over Sophia, her voice slicing through the hum of the cabin like a knife. Excuse me, sweetie, this isn't coach. First class is for people who can actually afford it, or at least for kids whose parents are sitting with them. Sophia looked up politely, her small voice soft and timid. I have a first-class ticket, ma'am. My daddy bought it for me. She reached carefully into her little backpack and pulled out her boarding pass, holding it up with both hands like an offering. Brittany snatched it from her fingers, examining it with exaggerated suspicion, holding it up to the light as if it might be counterfeit. The cabin grew quieter. Passengers in the surrounding seats turned to watch. Then, with deliberate force, Brittany slapped the boarding pass back against Sophia's cheek. Not hard enough to bruise deeply, but enough to sting sharply and leave a pink mark blooming on the child's fair skin. The sound was crisp, shocking in the confined space, like a small crack of thunder. Sophia flinched but didn't cry out. She just sat there, eyes wide with confusion and hurt, her lower lip trembling. My heart stopped. Tommy was tugging at my sleeve, but I couldn't move at first. I knew that kind of humiliation all too well. The unfair judgment, the assumption that someone like me, or this little girl, didn't belong in a nicer place. Poverty had taught me to stay quiet, to shrink into myself, to avoid drawing attention that could lead to worse trouble. But seeing it happen to a child, a defenseless little girl, it tore at something deep inside me. Horror flooded my veins, followed by a wave of anxiety that made my knees weak. I felt dizzy, the cabin spinning slightly as old memories surged. Eviction notices, empty refrigerators, nights when the cold wind howled through cracked windows while I huddled with Tommy under thin blankets. Yet I stepped forward anyway, my voice coming out softer than I intended, timid and polite, the way a woman like me, destitute, powerless, had learned to speak to authority. Excuse me, ma'am, I said, placing myself gently between Brittany and Sophia. She showed you her ticket. Please don't do that to a child. Brittany turned her glare on me, taking in my faded jeans, the patched coat that had seen too many winters, my thin frame that spoke of skipped meals. And who are you? This doesn't concern coach passengers. Go back to your seat. I swallowed hard, fear knotting in my throat, but I didn't move. Sophia looked up at me with those big eyes, a flicker of gratitude mixed with confusion. In the row behind, in seat 3A, a man sat quietly reading the Wall Street Journal. He was fair-skinned, in his early 40s, with sharp Italian-American features, dark hair neatly combed, a tailored cashmere coat draped over his broad shoulders, an expensive watch glinting subtly on his wrist. His name was Vincent Moretti, though I didn't know it yet. He was wealthy beyond imagination, owner of Apex Logistics, a company that controlled ground handling for nearly half the nation's commercial flights. But deeper still, he carried the weight of a hidden life, the gnawing guilt of choices made in the shadows, the consuming remorse for the violence that had built his empire, the violent emotional conflict that raged in his heart every day between the man he wanted to be for his daughter and the boss he had to be for his family. Vincent had been watching everything from the moment Sophia boarded alone. He had arranged for her to sit up front for a bit of independence, with him close behind in disguise, traveling low profile as always. Seeing the red mark on his little girl's cheek ignited a storm inside him. Guilt crashed over him like waves. How could he let this happen to his princess, the one pure thing in his darkened world? Remorse for the life that forced him to hide, to expose her to risks even on a simple flight. Yet he remained still, his face a mask of calm, fingers tightening on the newspaper. His power was quiet, strategic. He knew lashing out now would only escalate things dangerously. But the inner turmoil was fierce, a violent tearing at his soul, as he fought the urge to stand and end the confrontation in ways that would haunt him later. Passengers began murmuring. A businessman nearby pulled out his phone, discreetly starting to record. An older couple whispered judgments about kids these days trying to sneak upgrades. My own heart pounded with fear. I was nobody, poor and desperate, interfering in first class. What if they kicked me off the plane? Where would Tommy and I go then? Confusion swirled in my mind. Why was this happening to such a sweet child? And why did protecting her feel like the only right thing I'd done in years? Sophia rubbed her cheek gently, but she stayed composed, whispering so only I could hear. "Thank you, miss. You're very kind." Those words pierced me, bringing hot tears to my eyes that I blinked away. In my life of utter misery, foreclosure on our tiny apartment, jobs lost to illness without insurance, nights when hunger pains kept me awake while Tommy slept fitfully, the unfairness of it all had worn me down to numbness. But here was a moment of absurd injustice, a child struck for simply existing in a seat she rightfully occupied. It drew sympathy from deep within me, a quiet ache that threatened to spill over. Vincent's eyes, hidden behind the newspaper, darkened with intensity. The sight of this thin, resilient woman, shielding his daughter with nothing but her body, stirred something profound in him. For the first time in years, amid the remorse and guilt that plagued his nights, a new emotion surged. An overwhelming curiosity, laced with protectiveness. She looked familiar somehow, though he couldn't place it yet. His heart, armored against the world, felt a crack, a fierce, unexpected pull toward this stranger who had stepped into harm's way for his child. The cabin tension thickened as Brittany straightened, her voice rising. "Security will sort this out. No one belongs here without proper verification." I stood my ground, my body trembling but unyielding, while inside the turmoil grew. Fear for what came next, confusion at my own bravery, and a deep, disorienting dizziness as the gap between my impoverished world and this glimpse of wealth yawned wider. Little did I know, in the seat behind, Vincent Moretti's inner conflict raged even fiercer. Remorse for his absence in the moment, guilt for the dangers his life invited, and now, the first sparks of an intense, passionate protectiveness that would soon consume him entirely. The flight hadn't even pushed back from the gate at O'Hare, and already lives were colliding in ways none of us could foresee. The cabin of that Delta flight from Chicago O'Hare to New York LaGuardia felt like it was closing in around me, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee from the first-class service cart and the muffled chatter of passengers settling in for the holiday rush. It was December in 2024, and outside the window, snow flurries danced against the gray Illinois sky, a reminder of the bitter cold I had endured for far too many nights. My name is Emily Harper, and as I stood there in the aisle of first class, my faded denim jacket hanging loose on my malnourished frame, my hands trembling from a mix of exhaustion and the cheap diner coffee that was my only breakfast, I felt the weight of my poverty like chains around my ankles. I was thin, my cheeks hollow from skipping meals to feed Tommy, my eyes shadowed from sleepless nights in that rattling old Ford, parked in whatever Walmart lot would let me stay until morning. The wind had whipped through the cracked windows of abandoned shelters before that, chilling me to the bone, leaving my skin dry and cracked. How many times had I woken with frost on the blanket, Tommy curled against me for warmth, whispering prayers that tomorrow might bring a shift at the diner. But in that moment, none of my misery mattered. All I could see was little Sophia Moretti, her small hand still touching the pink mark on her cheek where Brittany Thompson had slapped the boarding pass back at her. Sophia's eyes, those wide, innocent blue eyes, met mine again, and in them I saw a flicker of fear mixed with something trusting, almost curious. "It's okay," I whispered to her, my voice soft and timid, the way a woman like me spoke when the world had beaten politeness into survival. "I'm here now." Brittany wheeled around, her uniform crisp and her name tag gleaming under the cabin lights, a stark contrast to my threadbare clothes that smelled faintly of grease from the diner. "What did you just say?" she demanded, her voice rising like a storm gathering force. She held up her phone, switching it to selfie mode, the camera light blinking on. "Hey everyone, it's your girl Brittany here on flight duty, and we've got some real drama in first class. This little princess thinks she can sit up here, and now we've got a coach mom playing hero. Y'all, is this entitlement or what?" The words hit me like a physical blow. Entitlement? Me, who had pawned my mother's wedding ring just to buy Tommy a pair of secondhand boots last winter? Me, who rationed canned soup until it was watered down, who walked miles in the snow because bus fare was a luxury? Horror flooded my chest, anxiety twisting my stomach into knots. My knees buckled slightly, a wave of dizziness washing over me as the unfairness of it all crashed down. Why was this happening? I was powerless, destitute. Interfering could mean losing our seats, stranding us in Chicago with no money for a motel. Confusion swirled in my mind. Was I wrong to step in? Fear gripped me, guarded walls rising as I wondered if Brittany would call security on me next. Passengers turned, phones emerging like weapons. A businessman in a tailored suit, sipping from a porcelain mug that probably cost more than my weekly tips, leaned forward. "Kids these days," he muttered loudly, and people from the back thinking they own the plane. An older woman nearby nodded, her pearl necklace catching the light. Who was this little girl, traveling alone in luxury? And why did protecting her feel like clutching at a lifeline in my sea of misery? In the seat behind, Vincent Moretti folded his Wall Street Journal with deliberate slowness, his fair-skinned hands steady, but his heart a battlefield of torment. Wealth poured from him effortlessly. The custom Italian leather shoes that cost thousands, the subtle scent of expensive cologne cutting through the cabin air, the platinum watch that could buy a house in my old neighborhood. He was powerful, the unseen king of Apex Logistics, controlling the ground operations that kept America's skies moving. But inside, gnawing remorse ate at him like acid. How had he let this happen to Sophia, his only light in a life shadowed by deals in dark alleys and rival factions that hungered for his downfall? Consuming guilt flooded him for choosing this low-profile trip, for thinking he could give her normalcy without his shadows creeping in. Violent emotion, one read. "This is gold. Keep filming." Her viewer count climbed, and she beamed for the camera. "See, folks? This is what happens when people try to scam the system. Security's on the way." The announcement sent a numb shock through me. My balance wavered. I grabbed the seat arm to steady myself, pain shooting through my chapped hands. Absurd unfairness piled on. Why film this? Why humiliate a child, and now me, for the world to mock? My poverty had been private torment, evicted again last month, Tommy's school calling about unpaid lunches. But now it was public, stripping me bare. Deep disorientation set in, the world blurring as anxiety peaked. I felt exposed, humiliated, tears threatening to spill. Sophia tugged my sleeve gently. "Miss, will they make you leave too?" Her voice was polite, soft for her age, but laced with fear. I don't know," I murmured, my own voice timid, polite even in chaos. Inside, torment violent and tearing. Powerless again, always powerless. Vincent's phone vibrated silently in his pocket. A text from a lieutenant. "Rival crew spotted at O'Hare, watching your gate." His heart seized. Not here, not now. But the confrontation on the plane had gone viral already. Sophia's face could be recognized. Remorse gnawed deeper, for dragging his daughter into his world. He typed back quickly. "Handle discreetly, no scenes." Brittany leaned in closer, phone thrust toward us. "Smile for the fans, hero mom. What's your story? Can't afford first class, but playing night?" The words were a dagger. My mind flashed to unjust nights. The landlord pounding at 3 a.m, the food bank turning us away for missing paperwork, the wind howling as I cried silently so Tommy wouldn't wake. Sympathy for myself mixed with pity for Sophia, evoking a quiet, condensed stillness amid the storm. A moment where my heart ached so deeply it nearly stopped. Then, unexpectedly, Vincent stood, not dramatically, but with quiet power that commanded the aisle. "Enough," he said, his voice low, authoritative, carrying the weight of boardrooms and backroom deals. Passengers hushed. Brittany faltered. But before he could say more, heavy footsteps echoed from the jet bridge. Security was coming. Vincent's inner conflict exploded. Protect them now or wait? The surge toward me intensified. Passionate, burning suspicion giving way to an intense need to shield this woman who had shielded his child. His wealth flashed in that moment, the private jet he could have taken, the empire at his fingertips, contrasting my humiliating poverty. As security boarded, the drama escalated, confusing and numbing, tearing my world apart. What would happen to Tommy alone in coach? To us? Little did I know, Vincent's heart was already hers in that fierce, overwhelming way. Love igniting like wildfire, ready to consume everything to keep us safe. The jet bridge door hissed open again, and 2 airport security officers stepped aboard, their boots heavy on the carpeted aisle, radios crackling with static. The taller one, Officer Ramirez, scanned the cabin with practiced authority, his eyes landing first on Brittany Thompson, then on little Sophia Moretti, still seated in 2A, then on me, standing protectively in front of the child like a fragile shield made of nothing but desperation and bone-deep exhaustion. My legs trembled beneath me. I could feel the blood draining from my face, leaving me lightheaded, the cabin tilting slightly as another wave of dizziness struck. How many times had authority figures looked at me exactly like this? The eviction deputy at the apartment door, the shelter worker turning us away because we were 5 minutes past curfew, the police officer who once told me I couldn't sleep in my car outside the library anymore. Poverty had taught me that uniforms meant danger, that people like me, thin, malnourished, dressed in clothes washed in laundromat sinks, were always assumed guilty first. My heart tore violently inside my chest, fear for Tommy alone in coach, horror at the thought of being separated from him, confusion about why I had ever stepped forward when staying invisible had kept us alive this long. "Ma'am," Officer Ramirez said to me, his voice firm but not unkind. "We've had a report of a disturbance in first class. We're going to need you and the child to come with us for verification." My throat closed. The words wouldn't come at first. When they did, they emerged soft, timid, polite, the only tone a destitute woman dared use with men in uniform. "Sir, please, the little girl showed her boarding pass. The flight attendant, she hit the pass against her face. I only tried to help." Brittany cut in sharply, holding her phone higher so the camera could capture everything. "This woman barged up here from coach and started interfering. The kid claims she belongs in first class, but look at her, no parent in sight. It's obviously some kind of scam, and now this person is making it worse." The word person landed like a slap of its own. I felt the sting deep in my hollow chest. Person. Not woman, not mother, just an undefined intruder from the back of the plane. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them away. I would not cry in front of strangers who already saw me as less than human. Passengers began choosing sides with whispers and glances. The businessman who had been recording leaned forward. I saw the whole thing. The kid's ticket looked real, but rules are rules. The older woman with the pearls nodded vigorously. "We paid extra for peace and quiet. This drama is unacceptable." A younger man in a college hoodie looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. Only a middle-aged woman across the aisle met my eyes with something like sympathy before looking away, ashamed. Sophia reached up and took my hand, her small, warm fingers curling around my cold, chapped ones. "Don't leave me," she whispered, so quietly only I could hear. The trust in her voice pierced me like a blade. I squeezed back gently, my heart ripping wider. Who was I to promise safety when I couldn't even keep my own son warm at night? In seat 3A, Vincent Moretti sat motionless, the Wall Street Journal now closed on his lap. To the casual observer, he was simply a wealthy businessman waiting out a delay. Cashmere coat folded neatly, Italian leather shoes polished to a discreet shine, the kind of understated luxury that spoke of private schools and vacation homes in places I had only seen on television. But inside him, a war raged with increasing ferocity. Gnawing remorse clawed at his gut. He had placed his daughter in this seat for a lesson in independence, thinking his nearness would be enough. Consuming guilt flooded him for every moment he had chosen the shadows of his empire over being the father she deserved. Violent emotional conflict tore at his soul. The Mafia boss who could end careers with a phone call, battling the man who wanted only to cradle his little girl and shield this brave, broken woman who stood guarding her. And that woman, Emily. The longer he watched me, the more the suspicion melted into something fiercer, more dangerous. An intense, burning surge rose in his chest, passionate protectiveness that felt perilously close to love from the very first moment he had seen me step between his child and harm. It terrified him. He had not allowed himself to feel anything this deeply since Sophia's mother died. Yet here it was, overwhelming, undeniable, tearing his carefully armored heart wide open. His phone vibrated again. Another encrypted message from his lieutenant. Rival crew confirmed at gate B14. 3 men, watching deplaning passengers. Orders? Vincent's jaw tightened. The viral video Brittany was streaming had already spread. Sophia's face, his proximity, everything exposed. Landing in New York would be treacherous. He typed back, "Divert them. Quiet meet at baggage claim. No scenes." Officer Ramirez stepped closer. "Ma'am, we need to resolve this quickly. The flight can't depart with an unresolved security issue. Please gather your belongings." I had no belongings in first class, only the worn purse slung across my body containing a few dollars in tips, Tommy's asthma inhaler, and a crumpled church bulletin with a cousin's phone number in New York. The absurdity of the moment struck me like a fresh injustice. I was being threatened with removal for defending a child, while the adult who had struck her stood filming for likes. Numbness spread through my limbs, followed by a sharp pain behind my eyes from exhaustion and unshed tears. My balance wavered again. I gripped the seat back to stay upright. Sophia looked up at the officer, her voice small but remarkably steady. "Sir, my daddy is right there." She pointed subtly toward Vincent. All eyes turned. Vincent rose slowly, unfolding his tall frame with the quiet authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. The cabin fell silent. Even Brittany's streaming commentary faltered. "Officer," Vincent said, his voice low, cultured, carrying the weight of boardrooms and back alleys alike. "My name is Vincent Moretti. This is my daughter, Sophia Moretti, seated in her assigned first-class seat. The boarding pass is valid, purchased by me. This woman," he gestured toward me with a gentleness that made my breath catch, "intervened only to protect my child from physical mistreatment by your crew member." Officer Ramirez hesitated, recognition flickering. The name Moretti carried weight in Chicago aviation circles. Apex logistics contracts were worth billions. Brittany recovered first, scoffing for her audience. "Anyone can say that. Where's the proof?" Vincent reached into his coat, not for a weapon, never that in public, but for a simple black leather card holder. He extracted one card and held it out, not to Brittany, but to the officer. Gold-embossed letters glinted. Vincent Moretti, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Apex Logistics Group. The second officer's eyes widened. He knew the name. Everyone in ground operations did. Apex handled baggage, fueling, de-icing, cargo. Without them, half the flights at O'Hare and LaGuardia would grind to a halt. A ripple of unease passed through the cabin. The businessman stopped recording. The pearl-wearing woman suddenly found her lap fascinating. Yet the drama was far from over. Brittany, sensing her narrative slipping, doubled down. Even if he's the father, the coachwoman has no business up here causing delays. We have a schedule. My heart tore anew, humiliation burning as fresh as the winter wind that had cut through my coat on so many homeless nights. Desperate, powerless, I stood exposed before wealth I could not fathom, judged by strangers who assumed the worst because of my patched clothes and hollow cheeks. Vincent's gaze met mine across the aisle. In that moment of quiet, condensed emotional stillness, something passed between us. Recognition, gratitude, and for him, that overwhelming surge intensifying into a fierce, passionate resolve. He would protect us both, whatever the cost. The inner conflict raged harder. Remorse for the danger his world invited, guilt for the poverty he now saw so clearly in my eyes, and a burning love that had ignited without warning, threatening to consume every careful boundary he had built. Officer Ramirez cleared his throat. "Sir, we'll need to verify this with the airline manifest," and Vincent's phone rang then, an incoming call from Apex's 24-hour operations center. He answered on speaker, voice calm. "Moretti, Mr. Moretti," came the immediate response, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "We've confirmed your reservation and Miss Sophia's. Is there an issue with the flight?" Vincent glanced at Brittany, then at me. "There is an issue with crew conduct toward my daughter and a passenger who defended her. I'd like it documented." The line went silent a beat. "Understood, sir. We'll coordinate with airline relations immediately." Brittany's face paled as the implications sank in. Sides were shifting fast. But outside, in the snowy terminal beyond our view, Vincent's rivals waited, tense, bold, unexpected confrontations brewing on the frozen tarmac of Chicago, ready to follow us to New York. The danger was only beginning. And in my torn, aching heart, guarded curiosity stirred beneath the fear. Who was this man who commanded such power with quiet words? And why did his eyes, when they met mine, look at me as though I was already precious? The cabin lights seemed to dim, or perhaps it was only the blood rushing from my head as the delay stretched on, minute after unbearable minute. Outside the window, the snow fell thicker now over the tarmac of Chicago O'Hare, blanketing the ground in a cruel white that reminded me too vividly of the nights Tommy and I had spent shivering in the car, the windshield frosting over while the wind howled like a living thing trying to get inside. My thin coat, bought secondhand 3 winters ago, offered no real protection against memory or cold, and standing here in the aisle of first class, I felt the chill seep deeper into my bones than any December storm ever had. Captain Hargrove's voice crackled over the intercom, calm but edged with impatience. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are experiencing a brief delay due to a passenger verification issue. We appreciate your patience and will update you shortly." Brief. The word mocked me. Nothing in my life had ever been brief when trouble came. Evictions dragged on for weeks. Hunger lingered for days. The ache of empty pockets stretched into months. Now this delay threatened to strand us entirely. If they removed me from the plane, where would Tommy and I go? Back to the shelter lottery? Back to the car with its cracked window and dying battery? Anxiety clawed up my throat, sharp and suffocating. My knees weakened again. I gripped the armrest of Sophia's seat to keep from swaying. The dizziness returned in waves, numbness spreading through my fingers until I could barely feel the little girl's hand still trusting in mine. Sophia looked up at me, her pink cheek fading but the hurt lingering in her eyes. "Are we going to miss Christmas in New York?" she asked softly, polite even in fear. Her question tore at me. Christmas. Tommy and I had planned to share one small gifted orange and whatever the church pantry offered. I had wrapped a used storybook for him in newspaper, telling myself it would be enough. Now, even that fragile hope felt absurdly unfair. Why should this child worry about missing holidays while I worried about missing meals? Brittany Thompson paced the galley curtain, phone finally lowered, but her expression triumphant. "This is ridiculous," she announced loudly to no one and everyone. "We're all suffering because one coach passenger decided to play hero." Passengers murmured agreement or discomfort, sides hardened further. The businessman checked his watch, an expensive piece that flashed gold, and sighed dramatically. The Pearl woman whispered to her husband about complaining to corporate. I stood frozen in that quiet, condensed, emotional stillness that comes just before the heart breaks completely. Powerless. Always powerless. My poverty laid bare for strangers to judge. The frayed cuffs of my jeans, the way my collarbone showed too sharply beneath the thin sweater. The dark circles under my eyes from nights when sleep evaded me because hunger and worry were louder than exhaustion. Vincent Moretti remained standing now, a quiet tower of controlled strength amid the chaos. To the other passengers, he appeared merely a concerned father, tall, fair-skinned, impeccably dressed in layers of cashmere and wool that cost more than I earned in months at the diner. But I felt the intensity radiating from him like heat from a hidden fire. His wealth was not loud, it was absolute. The subtle glint of his watch, the way his shoes bore no scuffs from salted sidewalks, the calm assurance that came from knowing one phone call could reroute entire fleets of aircraft. Apex Logistics, his empire, moved the nation's baggage, fuel, cargo. Without it, airports stalled. He could ground this flight with a word, yet he waited. Inside him, the torment escalated to violent peaks, gnawing remorse for exposing Sophia to this public cruelty, consuming guilt for the life he led, the shadowed meetings in Chicago warehouses where rival factions tested his borders nightly, the blood on ledgers he could never fully wash away. Violent emotional conflict raged. The Mafia boss, who could have ended Brittany's career in seconds, battled the father who wanted justice served properly. And now, most dangerously, the man whose armored heart had cracked wide open at the sight of me. That surge toward me intensified with every passing second, passionate and burning. Suspicion had evaporated completely. In its place bloomed an overwhelming, fierce love that shocked even him with its sudden depth. He had not permitted himself to feel anything this raw since losing Sophia's mother. Yet here it was, intense, immediate, tearing through every defense. He wanted to shield me from every cold night I had endured, every skipped meal, every humiliating moment of poverty. The disparity between his world and mine struck him like a physical blow. While he dined in private clubs, I had rationed canned beans. While his daughter flew first class, my son and I scraped for coach. The injustice of it fueled his inner storm. His phone vibrated twice, urgent messages from his lieutenant at the gate. Rivals moved closer, 2 additional men in terminal, armed but discreet, waiting for deplaning. Vincent's jaw flexed. He typed rapidly. Redirect through private lounge access. Secure vehicle at arrival. No engagement unless necessary. The captain emerged from the cockpit, uniform crisp, expression strained. Tower control was threatening to reassign their departure slot. Time was bleeding away. "Miss Moretti," Captain Hargrove said quietly, approaching Vincent with deference that silenced nearby passengers. "We've confirmed your reservation and your daughter's. The manifest is clear. However, the crew member insists on protocol for the disturbance." Vincent's voice remained low, lethal in its calm. "The disturbance began when your employee physically struck my 8-year-old daughter with a boarding pass and then live-streamed the incident for public entertainment. The woman standing here," His eyes flicked to me, softening imperceptibly. Acted only to protect a child. I suggest you resolve this in a manner that reflects well on your airline. The captain paled. Brittany, overhearing, stepped forward defiantly. With respect, sir, we have procedures. Unaccompanied minors in premium cabins require... She is not unaccompanied, Vincent cut in smoothly. I am seated directly behind her. More murmurs. Phones rose again, discreet recordings that would spread the story further. Vincent knew the risk. The more visible this became, the bolder his rivals grew. My own heart tore wider with every exchange. Confusion mounted. Why was this powerful man defending me, a nobody from Coach? Guarded curiosity stirred beneath the fear. Those eyes, when they met mine, held something deeper than gratitude. Shock rippled through me, psychological and physical. A wealthy, commanding man looking at destitute me with tenderness? The disparity numbed me further. I swayed slightly, pain blooming behind my temples from exhaustion and overwhelm. Sophia squeezed my hand. Daddy will fix it, she whispered, trusting completely. But the delay dragged on. Ground crew voices crackled over the intercom. De-icing needed, slot pressure mounting. Passengers grew restless. A flight attendant from Coach peered in, offering Brittany backup with a sympathetic wink. Then Vincent's phone rang openly, an incoming call from Apex Corporate Relations. He answered on speaker, voice cool. Moretti. Sir, came an efficient female voice, loud enough for the forward cabin to hear. We've been monitoring the situation via passenger reports and social media. The video has exceeded 50,000 views. Legal is preparing statements. Do you require immediate ground support at O'Hare or LaGuardia? Vincent glanced at Brittany, then at me, his gaze lingering. Prepare both, and inform airline executive relations that Apex will be reviewing all service contracts pending resolution of this passenger treatment issue. The captain's face drained of color. Brittany's bravado cracked visibly. Yet the drama escalated further. Outside, unseen by us, Vincent's lieutenant intercepted two rival men near the gate. Tense words exchanged in the crowded terminal, bold stares and subtle positioning that promised consequences without a single raised voice. The rivals backed off for now, but the message was clear. New York would be hostile. Inside the cabin, I stood trembling, inner world violently torn. Desperate fear for Tommy, horror at my exposure, and now, absurdly, unfairly, a flicker of something warm when Vincent's eyes met mine again. That look, protective, intense, almost possessive. It confused and disoriented me completely. A man like him, noticing a woman like me? The psychological shock hit hard. From nights of cold wind and empty stomachs to this sudden, overwhelming sense of being seen, truly seen, by power itself. The captain cleared his throat. We'll need a few more minutes to confer with ground operations. Minutes. More minutes trapped in this escalating nightmare. Vincent stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that I caught the subtle warmth of expensive cologne against the recycled cabin air. It will be resolved, he said quietly, meant only for me. His voice carried promise and something deeper, something that made my breath catch. In that moment of quiet, emotional stillness amid rising chaos, I felt the first dangerous stirrings. Guarded curiosity blooming into tentative trust, fear mingling with an inexplicable sense of safety beside this stranger whose world was galaxies from mine. But the delay continued, tension coiling tighter, and outside in the snowy terminal, rival shadows waited for our arrival, bold, patient, ready. My torn heart could barely withstand the weight of what was coming. The snow outside the aircraft window had turned into a steady swirl, blanketing the wings in white and delaying us even further, as if the Chicago winter itself conspired to keep us trapped in this moment of escalating unfairness. I stood in the aisle, my thin frame shaking from cold and exhaustion, my hand still joined with little Sophia Moretti's warm one. Every breath felt shallow, as though the recycled air carried the weight of every judgmental stare in first class. My poverty had never felt more pitiful, more humiliating. The way my coat gaped at the zipper because I had lost so much weight, the chapped skin on my knuckles from washing dishes in scalding water for minimum tips, the hollow ache in my stomach that had become a constant companion after too many nights choosing between gas for the car and food for Tommy. Captain Hargrove returned from the cockpit, his face tight with the pressure of a departure slot slipping away. He approached Vincent Moretti first, speaking in the lowered tones men use when addressing someone whose name carries real power. "Mr. Moretti, I've confirmed your booking personally. Both seats are legitimate, but the crew supervisor is insisting on full documentation before we can clear this." Vincent's expression remained carved from ice, but I saw the storm behind his eyes. He reached into the inner pocket of his cashmere coat, not hurriedly, never hurriedly, and withdrew a small black leather card case that looked softer than anything I had touched in years. From it, he drew one single card, matte black with gold lettering that caught the cabin lights like quiet fire. He did not hand it to the captain immediately. Instead, he turned to Sophia. "Principessa," he said softly, using a word I didn't understand, but that made her face light up despite the fading pink mark on her cheek. "Give the captain your emergency card." Sophia nodded with solemn trust, reached into her Chicago Bears backpack, and pulled out a smaller version of the same card, encased in clear plastic like a treasured keepsake. She held it up with both hands. "Here, sir." Captain Hargrove took it carefully, as though it might burn him. His eyes scanned the text, and the color drained from his face in slow degrees. Vincent Moretti, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Apex Logistics Group. Primary contractor, ground handling, cargo, and fuel services, all major U.S. hub airports. The captain's throat moved as he swallowed. Everyone in aviation knew Apex. They moved the suitcases, fueled the jets, loaded the cargo holds that kept overnight packages and fresh produce flowing across the country. A single unhappy phone call from Apex could delay an airline's operations for days. A contract review could cost hundreds of millions. The cabin fell into a sudden, oppressive hush. Even Brittany Thompson's phone lowered an inch. Vincent spoke, his voice low but carrying effortlessly to every row. My daughter was seated in her assigned place. Your flight attendant questioned her right to be here, physically struck her with a boarding pass, and then broadcast the incident live to thousands of viewers. The woman beside her, his gaze settled on me, and the intensity in it sent a shiver through my exhausted body, risked her own safety to protect a child she had never met. I felt every eye turn to me again, but this time the judgment mixed with something new, curiosity, perhaps even discomfort. My cheeks burned with fresh humiliation. I was the ragged intruder from Coach, thin and worn, standing next to wealth I could not even imagine. The disparity struck me like a physical blow. His coat alone could have paid our rent for a year when we still had rent to pay. Inside Vincent, the inner tearing reached a new, violent peak, gnawing remorse for the red mark on Sophia's cheek, consuming guilt for every moment he had chosen power over presence. And now, most dangerously, the overwhelming surge toward me, Emily Harper, intensifying into a fierce, passionate love that terrified him with its sudden force. He had spent years encasing his heart in steel after his wife's death, allowing tenderness only for Sophia. Yet here it was, burning from the very first moment he had seen me shield his child, growing with every second I stood trembling but unbowed. He wanted to wrap me in the warmth I had clearly never known, feed me meals I had denied myself, give me and my son the safety he could buy with a snap of his fingers. The psychological shock of it rocked him. A man who commanded fear now felt fear, of losing this fragile, brave woman before he could even speak her name. Captain Hargrove cleared his throat, finding his voice. "Mr. Moretti, I had no idea. On behalf of the airline, Vincent lifted one hand, gentle but absolute. "Ideas are not the issue, Captain. Actions are. My daughter was assaulted by your crew. A passenger who defended her is now being threatened with removal. Correct this." Brittany tried one last grasp at authority. "Sir, with respect, we have policies about unaccompanied." "She is not unaccompanied," Vincent repeated, quieter this time, but the words cut like winter wind. "I have been here the entire time." The captain turned to Brittany, his tone shifting. "Stand down, return to the galley." Her face flushed crimson, but she obeyed, phone finally dark. The power reversal rippled outward like rings on water. Passengers who had murmured support for her now looked away. The businessman pocketed his device. The Pearl woman stared at her hands. Yet the revelation only deepened my disorientation. Dizziness washed over me again. I swayed, and Sophia steadied me with surprising strength for an 8-year-old. "Sit with me, miss," she whispered. I hesitated. Coach passengers did not sit in first class, but Vincent nodded once, a permission that felt like grace. I lowered myself into the empty window seat beside Sophia, my legs giving way more from shock than obedience. The leather was soft, warm, luxurious beyond anything I had known. Tears threatened again at the absurdity. Me, who had slept on vinyl car seats with frost creeping up the windows, now cradled in comfort I did not deserve. Vincent remained standing, close enough that I could sense his nearness like a shield. His phone vibrated, another encrypted message. He glanced at the screen. Rivals confirmed boarding same terminal at LaGuardia. 4 men, waiting in arrivals hall. His jaw flexed imperceptibly. He typed back. "Private escort through customs corridor. Black SUVs. Driver Marco." Outside our sealed world, tense confrontations were already forming. His lieutenant exchanging hard stares with 2 rival enforcers near the gate, words low and clipped, boundaries drawn without a hand raised. The rivals backed off for now, but the message traveled fast. Moretti and the child were exposed. New York would be a chessboard. Inside the cabin, a new quiet settled, condensed, heavy with unspoken realizations. Captain Hargrove spoke into his radio, voice low. "Ground control, we're resolving the passenger issue. Request 10 additional minutes on slot." 10 minutes. 10 more minutes of this tearing limbo. Vincent finally sat, in the aisle seat across from us, close enough to reach out if needed. His eyes met mine over Sophia's head. In that moment of quiet, emotional stillness, something wordless passed between us. Gratitude from him, guarded curiosity from me, and beneath it all, the first dangerous sparks of a connection neither of us understood yet. But the drama was far from over. Brittany's video had already spread beyond the plane. Tens of thousands of views climbing fast. Sophia's face recognizable, my ragged figure beside her. The danger followed us like smoke, and in my torn, aching heart, confusion and fear mingled with the faintest, most absurd warmth. This powerful man had claimed us, his daughter and me, as worth protecting. The psychological shock of it left me numb, tears sliding silently down my cheeks for the first time since boarding. Vincent saw them. His hand tightened on the armrest, inner conflict raging anew. He would burn worlds to stop those tears. If only he could do it without dragging us deeper into the shadows that already hunted him. The plane remained still on the snowy tarmac, engines humming, waiting. And my world, so long defined by cold wind and empty hands, tilted on its axis with the weight of one revealed name, Vincent Moretti. The aircraft remained motionless on the frozen tarmac, engines idling like a held breath, while inside the cabin the air grew heavier with every passing second. Snow piled softly against the windows, sealing us in a cocoon of artificial warmth that mocked the cold nights I knew too well, the ones where Tommy and I had huddled under every blanket we owned in the back seat of the car, the wind slicing through gaps in the door seals until my fingers went numb and my teeth chattered so hard I feared they would break. I sat now in the wide, heated leather of seat 2B beside Sophia, my worn sneakers looking absurdly out of place on the plush carpet. The luxury surrounded me like an accusation, the individual screen glowing softly, the folded cashmere blanket on the armrest, the faint scent of real coffee drifting from the galley. My stomach twisted with a hunger deeper than physical, hunger for a life where a child was never struck for sitting in a paid seat, where a mother was never threatened with removal for protecting one. Tears welled again, silent and hot, sliding down my thin cheeks before I could stop them. I wiped them away with the sleeve of my patched coat, ashamed to be crying in first class. Captain Hargrove stood in the aisle, card still in hand, voice lowered almost to a whisper as he spoke to Vincent. "Mr. Moretti, Apex Logistics is our primary ground handling partner at every major hub. I understand the gravity here. I'm contacting regional operations immediately." Vincent nodded once, the movement economical, controlled. But I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers curled slightly against his thigh. Wealth radiated from him in waves now revealed. The quiet command that made captains defer. The empire that could stall an airline's heartbeat with a single contract review. Yet his eyes, when they met mine across Sophia's sleeping head, held no arrogance, only a fierce, burning intensity that made my breath catch. Inside him, the torment reached a crescendo. Gnawing remorse for every second Sophia had sat frightened and alone before he revealed himself. Consuming guilt for the shadows of his hidden life that now threatened us all. Violent emotional conflict tore at his core. The Mafia boss who could crush opposition with ruthless efficiency battled the man whose heart had ignited, passionately, overwhelmingly, for the destitute woman who had shielded his daughter without knowing his name. That love, born in the very first moment he saw me step forward, now burned like a living flame, terrifying in its depth. He wanted to gather me close, erase every cold night, every skipped meal, every tear born of powerlessness. The disparity between his world and mine struck him anew with brutal force. While he commanded fleets and fortunes, I had rationed saltines and prayed the car would start in sub-zero dawn. He lifted his phone, sleek, latest model, the kind I had only seen in store windows, and dialed on speaker so the forward cabin could hear. "Moretti?" The voice that answered was crisp, professional, immediate. "Sir, Operations Center. We've monitored the social media escalation. The video has exceeded 150,000 views. Legal and public relations are on standby. Do you require ground intervention at O'Hare or LaGuardia?" Vincent's tone remained velvet over steel. "Both. Inform the airline's chief operating officer that Apex is placing all current and pending service contracts under immediate review due to documented passenger safety concerns involving a minor and discriminatory crew conduct. I expect a direct call within 5 minutes." A beat of silence on the line. "Understood, sir. Executing now." Captain Hargrove's face went ashen. Brittany, lingering near the galley curtain, dropped her professional mask entirely, eyes wide, phone forgotten. The power reversal swept through the cabin like a sudden wind. Passengers who had supported her now shifted uncomfortably. The businessman stared at his laptop screen as though it might save him. The Pearl woman clutched her husband's arm. The captain found his voice. "Mr. Moretti, the regional director will be patched through momentarily. Please accept my personal assurance that this will be handled at the highest level." Vincent inclined his head, but his gaze returned to me. In that quiet, condensed, emotional stillness, the world narrowed to just us, his eyes promising safety, mine wide with shock and guarded wonder. A man of such power, looking at broken, impoverished me with tenderness that felt like sunlight after endless winter. The psychological shock hit harder than any hunger pang. Dizziness surged again, the cabin tilting as numbness spread through my limbs. I gripped the armrest, pain blooming in my chest from the violent tearing of my heart, fear that this was illusion, confusion at the warmth spreading despite everything, desperate curiosity about why he watched me as though I mattered. Sophia stirred in her sleep, murmuring, and instinctively I adjusted the blanket around her small shoulders, an act so natural it startled me. Vincent noticed. His hand tightened on his phone, inner conflict raging anew. He would move mountains to keep this moment, this fragile trust intact. His device rang almost instantly, the airline's regional director, voice strained through the speaker. "Mr. Moretti, this is Director Ellison. We are deeply appalled by the incident report. Please accept our profound apologies. Whatever resolution you require will be implemented immediately." Vincent's reply was measured. "First, the crew member who physically struck my daughter and broadcast the incident will be removed from this flight and placed on indefinite suspension pending investigation. Second, full policy review and mandatory retraining on passenger treatment, particularly regarding minors and perceived class discrimination. Third, a formal apology to the passenger who intervened to protect my child." "Consider it done, sir. The crew member will deplane now. Policies will be drafted within 24 hours for your review." Brittany gasped audibly as security returned, not for me, but for her. She was escorted off quietly, face pale, career unraveling in real time. The reversal complete, the cabin exhaled. Passengers applauded tentatively. Captain Hargrove announced preparations for departure. Yet danger shadowed us still. Vincent's phone vibrated. Encrypted update. Rivals positioned in LaGuardia arrivals. 5 now. Private escort confirmed, but they're watching all exits. Outside our sealed world, his lieutenant had already engaged in another tense standoff. Bold words exchanged in a quiet terminal corridor. Postures aggressive but controlled. Rivals retreating with promises of later reckoning. Inside, I remained seated beside Sophia, tears drying on my cheeks, inner world torn between terror and an inexplicable sense of shelter. Vincent leaned across the aisle, voice low enough for only me. "You will not be harmed. Neither will your son. I promise you this." The promise landed like warmth against my frozen heart. Guarded curiosity flared brighter. Why this vow to a stranger from Coach? The disparity numbed me further, his absolute power against my absolute poverty. Yet the way he looked at me, passionate, protective, burning, ignited something I had never known. The plane finally pushed back, engines roaring against the snow. But as we taxied, Vincent's inner torment deepened. Love for me, now intertwined with fear for what his enemies might force him to do to keep us safe. The flame that had sparked in suspicion now raged uncontained, and in my torn, aching heart, the first fragile shoots of trust pushed through years of cold despair, terrifying, impossible, but undeniably alive. The aircraft climbed steadily through the clouds, leaving the snowy sprawl of Chicago behind. But inside my chest, a different storm raged, one that no altitude could escape. I sat beside Sophia in the wide first-class seat, her small head resting trustingly against my arm as she dozed, the pink mark on her cheek now barely visible. The blanket tucked around her was soft, real cashmere, the kind of luxury that made my threadbare coat feel like sandpaper against my skin. Every small comfort of this cabin, the warm air, the quiet hum, the attentive service now directed toward us, highlighted the chasm between Vincent Moretti's world and mine with cruel clarity. I was still Emily Harper, 28 years old, thin to the point of frailty, ribs faintly visible beneath my faded sweater when I breathed deeply. My hands, rough from diner work and cold nights gripping a steering wheel for warmth, rested awkwardly on my lap. Sleep had been a stranger for months, nights in the car with Tommy, engine off to save gas, wind rattling the windows until dawn. Hunger had carved hollows beneath my eyes, and the constant, gnawing worry about tomorrow had etched lines that no one my age should carry. Poverty was not just lack, it was humiliation worn daily, like the patched soles of my shoes that let in snow and shame. Across the aisle, Vincent watched us with an intensity that made the cabin feel smaller. He had removed his cashmere coat, revealing a tailored shirt that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, wealth in every stitch, every subtle detail. His watch caught the light as he moved, a quiet statement of power that could command fleets on the ground while we soared above. Yet his fair-skinned face, usually composed, now carried faint lines of strain. The revelations of his identity and leverage had resolved the immediate crisis, but something deeper troubled him. Sophia stirred, blinking awake. "Daddy," she murmured, reaching across the aisle. Vincent leaned forward instantly, taking her hand with a tenderness that cracked something inside me. "I'm here, Principessa," he said softly. Then, almost as an afterthought, his gaze shifted fully to me. "And you, what is your name?" The question was simple, but it landed like thunder. No one had asked my name with such quiet weight in years. My voice emerged timid, polite, the way destitution had trained me to speak to anyone who might hold power over my fate. Emily Harper, sir." His eyes widened, not dramatically, but enough that I saw it. A flicker of recognition, then shock, raw and unguarded. He straightened slowly, as though the name had struck him physically. "Emily Harper," he repeated, voice barely above a whisper. "From St. Catherine's Parish? On the south side?" The world tilted. Dizziness crashed over me harder than any before, numbness flooding my limbs until I gripped the armrest to stay upright. St. Catherine's, the little brick church where I had gone to school on scholarship, where neighborhood kids played kickball in the parking lot after Mass. 25 years dissolved in an instant. Vinny? The childhood nickname slipped out before I could stop it, soft and trembling. "Vinny Moretti?" He nodded once, eyes never leaving mine. In that moment of quiet, condensed emotional stillness, the cabin noise faded. The engines, the service cart, the other passengers, all vanished. Only us. Memory flooded back with violent force. 12-year-old Vinny defending a scrawny 10-year-old me from bigger kids who mocked my patched dresses and my father's long illness. Vinny sharing his lunch when mine was only a bruised apple. Vinny promising, the day my family moved away after Dad died, that he would find me again someday. Then life had torn us apart, his family rising in ways I didn't understand then, mine sinking into grief and poverty that never lifted. Tears filled my eyes without permission, spilling hot down my cheeks. Shock tore my heart wider. The boy who had been my first innocent protector was now this powerful man shielding me again. The psychological upheaval was numbing, confusing. How could fate reunite us like this, with me at my lowest, thin and broken, while he commanded worlds? Vincent's own inner world shattered anew. The passionate love that had ignited the moment he saw me, stepped forward now exploded into something deeper, more painful. Recognition of the girl he had never forgotten, the one pure memory in a life darkened by choices he could never undo. Gnawing remorse crashed over him. for the years lost, for the empire built on shadows that kept him from ever searching for her, for seeing her now reduced to this fragile state by a world that had been unkind while his wealth grew boundless. Violent emotional conflict raged, joy at finding her warring with guilt that she had suffered alone. The surge of love, already intense, became burning, overwhelming, a vow forming in his heart to rewrite every injustice she had endured. "Emily," he said, voice rough with emotion he rarely allowed, "all these years." I could only nod, tears falling faster. Sophia looked between us, confused but sensing the weight. "You know each other?" "From a long time ago," Vincent answered, never looking away from me. "When I was a boy, and she was the kindest girl I knew." The words pierced me. Kindest? Me, who had become guarded, fearful, reduced to scraping survival? Yet the way he said it, fierce, protective, passionate, ignited something long buried. Guarded curiosity flared into desperate wonder. Did he truly see me still? His phone vibrated urgently, encrypted message visible only to him. Rival crew confirmed in LaGuardia baggage claim. 6 now, watching all exits. Private escort delayed by weather. Vincent's expression hardened imperceptibly. Outside our emotional cocoon, danger circled closer. His lieutenant had already faced another bold confrontation, standing toe-to-toe with 2 rivals in a quiet airport hallway, words sharp, postures unyielding, forcing a temporary retreat without escalation. But here, in this suspended sky, the past and present collided with tear-inducing force. I wept silently for the child I had been, for the hardships that followed, for this impossible reunion. Vincent reached across the aisle, hesitating only a moment before covering my trembling hand with his, warm, strong, steady. "I looked for you," he said quietly, "after your family moved, but life pulled me another way." The confession carried layers of remorse I could feel. I understood pulling. Poverty had pulled me under, while something darker had pulled him up. Yet his hand on mine felt like anchoring after years adrift. Sophia smiled sleepily. "Daddy's friend," she murmured, content. The captain's voice interrupted softly over the intercom. "We're beginning descent into LaGuardia. Weather is clear." Clear, but nothing felt clear. My heart tore with increasing violence, joy at rediscovery clashing with fear of what his world might mean, confusion at the intensity in his eyes, desperate curiosity about whether this was real. Vincent squeezed my hand gently, promise in the touch. Whatever waited on the ground, rivals, danger, the vast disparity between our lives, he would face it to keep us safe. And in that moment, the boy I had known and the man he had become blurred into one. My protector, returned when I needed him most. Tears fell unchecked now, for lost years and impossible hope. The plane descended, carrying us toward whatever came next, together. The aircraft banked gently over the glittering lights of New York, beginning its final descent into LaGuardia. But inside my chest, the turbulence was far more violent. Sophia slept peacefully against my shoulder, her small breath steady, trusting in a way that broke my heart anew. I sat rigid in the luxurious seat, the soft leather a cruel reminder of how far I had fallen since childhood, since the days when Vinnie Moretti shared his sandwich with a hungry little girl in patched dresses. My body ached from exhaustion, thin frame protesting every small movement, hunger gnawing persistently because the meal service had passed me by in the chaos. The disparity pressed in. Vincent's world of quiet power and endless resources against my years of cold wind slicing through car windows, of rationing peanut butter until the jar scraped empty, of nights when sleep evaded me because worry about Tommy's cough or the next bill was louder than any lullaby. Vincent sat across the aisle, phone in hand, face composed, but eyes dark with fresh storm. The childhood reunion had torn us both open, yet the tenderness in his gaze now carried an edge of urgency that chilled me more than any winter night. His device buzzed, low, insistent. He angled the screen away, but I caught the encrypted message before he locked it. Rival crew confirmed in arrivals. 7 men now, armed but concealed. Primary exit blocked. Secondary compromised. His jaw flexed, the only outward sign. He typed rapidly. Divert to private FBO, black SUVs, armed escort, no delays. My breath caught. Rivals. Armed. The words sliced through the fragile warmth of our reunion like ice through glass. Horror flooded me, anxiety twisting my stomach until nausea rose. Dizziness surged again. The cabin lights blurred as numbness spread through my arms. What world had I stepped into by protecting one little girl? Vincent noticed my pallor instantly. He leaned closer, voice low and steady. Emily, look at me. I obeyed, my voice emerging soft, timid, trembling. Vinny, what's happening? He hesitated only a heartbeat, the Mafia boss calculating, the man aching. There are people who don't wish me well. The video from the plane spread too far, too fast. Sophia's face, mine, yours. They know we're landing. The confession landed like a physical weight. Shock tore my heart wider. Not just reunited with my childhood protector, but plunged into mortal danger because of it. Confusion swirled violently. Why would anyone hunt a father and his daughter over a plane incident? Fear gripped me, desperate and powerless. The same helplessness I had known in eviction courts and food bank lines, only now sharpened to lethal edge. Vincent reached across, covering my cold hand with his warm one again. The touch grounded me, yet ignited the burning intensity in his eyes. I will not let anything touch you or Sophia, or your son. I swear it. The vow carried absolute power, the wealth to hire protection, the influence to reroute airports, the hidden authority to make threats vanish. Yet his hand trembled almost imperceptibly. Inside him, torment escalated to unbearable peaks. Gnawing remorse for dragging the woman he had just found, the girl he had never stopped carrying in his heart, into the crosshairs of his shadowed life. Consuming guilt for every choice that built his empire on edges sharp enough to cut those he loved. Violent emotional conflict raged fiercer than ever. The passionate, overwhelming love that had ignited at first sight now burned with desperate urgency, warring against terror that he might lose her minutes after rediscovering her. Outside the aircraft, unseen, the stakes rose. Vincent's lieutenant, stationed in the terminal, faced another bold confrontation. 3 rival enforcers blocking the private corridor to the fixed base operator lounge. Words exchanged in low, clipped tones, postures squared, stares unyielding. A subtle shift of jackets revealed concealed threat, but no move made. The rivals backed off inches, buying time, promising later payment. Captain Hargrove's voice came over the intercom, calm for the passengers but edged for those who listened closely. Ladies and gentlemen, due to operational requirements, we'll be taxiing to a private facility upon landing. Ground transportation will be provided. Murmurs rippled through the cabin. Passengers assumed VIP treatment. Only we knew it was survival. Vincent ended another call, quiet instructions to his security detail. 2 teams, armored vehicles, clear the tarmac. His wealth displayed itself in chilling intensity. Private jets on standby, pilots on retainer, escorts who could redirect airport traffic with one call. I pulled my hand back gently, though the loss of warmth hurt. Guarded fear rose alongside desperate curiosity. Vinny, Who are you now, really? He met my eyes, remorse raw. Someone who made hard choices to protect the people I love. Choices that painted targets on my back, and now on yours. Tears welled again, for the boy who shared lunch, for the man who commanded fear, yet looked at me with burning tenderness. The psychological shock numbed me completely, from nights of cold wind and empty cupboards to sudden lethal danger beside impossible wealth. My heart tore with increasing violence, joy at reunion clashing against terror of loss, confusion at his love warring with fear of its cost. Sophia woke fully, sensing tension. "Daddy?" He smiled for her, gentle, reassuring. "We're landing soon, Principessa. Stay close to Emily and me." She nodded, trusting utterly. I envied that trust, even as I clung to it. The plane touched down smoothly, taxiing away from the main terminal toward a distant, lighted hangar. Through the window, I saw black SUVs waiting, tinted windows, engines running. Men in dark coats stood ready. Vincent's phone buzzed final confirmation. Path clear, rivals diverted, for now. But the danger was only delayed. As the engine spooled down, he stood, helping Sophia with her coat, then turning to me. His hand brushed my cheek, wiping away a tear I hadn't felt fall. "I lost you once," he said quietly, voice rough with emotion. "I will not lose you again, whatever it takes." The promise carried lethal weight and passionate love that burned brighter in the face of threat. My torn heart could barely contain it. From destitute isolation to this fierce protection, the shift disorienting, painful, yet achingly needed. The door opened to cold New York air. Armed escorts waited. We stepped out together, Vincent's arms steady around my shoulders, Sophia's hand in mine, into a night where rivals watched from shadows, and love, newly reborn, faced its first mortal test. Tears froze on my cheeks as the wind hit, but Vincent's warmth beside me defied the cold. Whatever came next, we would face it as one. The cold New York night rushed into the cabin as the door opened, carrying the sharp scent of jet fuel and winter air that bit straight through my thin coat. My legs nearly buckled on the metal stairs, the wind whipping my hair and reminding me instantly of all those nights in the car when frost had crept across the windshield while Tommy and I shared one thin blanket. I was still Emily Harper, malnourished, sleep-starved, dressed in clothes that had been washed too many times in cold laundromat water. Every step down to the tarmac felt unreal, as though poverty itself clung to me like frost, unwilling to let go even here, surrounded by black SUVs and men in dark coats who moved with disciplined purpose. Vincent guided us with one arm around Sophia and the other steadying me, his touch warm and absolute. The wealth was everywhere now. Armored vehicles idling with engines barely audible, drivers in tailored suits, security men whose earpieces glinted under the floodlights. A private hangar loomed nearby, its doors open to reveal a waiting limousine that could have housed my old life 10 times over. The disparity struck me like a fresh wound, his world of seamless protection against my years of begging for shelter spots, of skipping meals so Tommy could eat, of nights when the wind howled so loudly I pressed my hands over his ears to keep him asleep. Yet danger pressed closer than comfort. Vincent's phone vibrated again as we reached the tarmac. He glanced at the screen, face tightening. Secondary exit blocked. Rivals moved faster than expected. 8 men in 2 vehicles outside the FBO gate. My heart seized. Horror flooded me, anxiety sharp enough to taste. Dizziness returned in a sickening rush. I swayed, clutching Sophia's hand harder than I meant to. The child looked up, frightened but trusting. "Emily?" "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered, voice soft and timid, the way fear had trained me. But inside, my world tore violently. Confusion at how quickly safety had turned to mortal threat. desperate fear for Tommy, still waiting in the terminal with a kind stranger from the flight crew. Guarded curiosity warring with terror about what Vincent's life truly entailed. Vincent signaled his men. 2 SUVs peeled away to flank, headlights cutting through the dark. We go straight to the limo, no stops. We moved quickly across the open tarmac, wind whipping harder. Then headlights flared beyond the fence. 2 dark sedans accelerating toward the gate, tires screeching on icy pavement. Rival vehicles. Vincent's security team reacted instantly, forming a tight circle around us, hands inside coats, but no weapons drawn. The lead SUV blocked the gate just as the rivals braked hard. A tense, bold confrontation unfolded in seconds. Vincent's driver stepping out, voice low but carrying authority. Rivals responding with sharp words and aggressive postures. No one touched a weapon. It was a standoff of wills. Stares locked, promises of consequences, unspoken but clear. The rivals backed off inches, engines revving, buying time for a later move. Vincent hurried us into the limousine, heated seats, soft leather, privacy glass rising with a whisper. Sophia climbed in first, then me, then him. The door sealed with a solid thunk, and the vehicle surged forward, escorted front and rear. Inside the warm cocoon, I trembled uncontrollably. Shock and confusion numbed me. Tears froze on my lashes. Vinny, they were going to hurt us? Because of a plane argument? He pulled me gently against his side, Sophia curling into my lap. Not the argument. Me. My business. Crosses lines others want. The video gave them a window. His voice carried raw remorse. Inside him, torment peaked unbearably, gnawing guilt for endangering the woman he had just found, the girl whose memory had been his one light in dark years, consuming regret that his wealth and power now painted targets on us all. Violent emotional conflict raged, the passionate, burning love that had surged from the first moment, now twisted with desperate fear of loss. He would raise empires to keep me safe, yet hated that his empire demanded it. Then, in the quiet hum of the speeding limousine, I felt inside my worn purse, the small weight I had carried legally since an abusive ex threatened Tommy and me 2 years ago. My hand closed around it, a compact pistol, registered, barely used, bought with the last of an insurance payout. Poverty had forced hard choices, protection I could afford when shelters turned us away. I drew it out slowly, voice trembling but steady for the first time. Vinny, if anyone tries to touch Sophia, or Tommy, or you, they'll have to go through me first. The revelation hung in the warm air. Vincent stared at the weapon, then at my face, thin, exhausted, but eyes fierce with maternal steel. Shock rippled through him, followed by an overwhelming surge of admiration and love, deeper than any before. The destitute woman he had vowed to protect was no fragile victim. She carried her own courage, forged in the coldest fires of hardship. His hand covered mine on the grip, not to take it, but to steady. "Emily," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "You've carried this alone?" I nodded, tears spilling again. For Tommy, always for Tommy. Sophia looked up, wide-eyed but unafraid. Emily's brave like Daddy. Vincent pulled us both closer, arms strong around my shoulders. The psychological shock gripped me harder. From powerless nights defending my son with nothing but prayers, to this, loved, protected, and now protecting in return, beside a man whose power could move mountains. The disparity numbed and thrilled me. His armored world against my scraped survival, yet our courage meeting equal. Outside, the escort navigated icy streets. Another unexpected confrontation flared briefly. Rival sedan pulling alongside at a light, windows down just enough for hard stares and a single shouted threat before Vincent's rear vehicle blocked and accelerated away. No shots, only tension thick as the night. Inside, a new quiet settled, condensed, charged with revelation. Vincent's lips brushed my temple, a promise and confession in one. You will never carry anything alone again. My torn heart could barely contain the intensity. Fear of the danger, joy at his love, shock at my own revealed strength. Tears fell for every unjust night I had endured, for the absurd miracle of this reunion turned alliance. The limousine sped toward safety, toward Tommy, toward whatever future we could forge from ashes and armor. And in Vincent's burning gaze, I saw our truth. Two children from the same parish, scarred by different shadows, now fierce together against the dark. The limousine sped through the dark streets of Queens, tires humming over wet pavement, escorted front and rear by black SUVs whose headlights cut through the night like silent guardians. Inside, the world felt both impossibly safe and terrifyingly fragile. Sophia had fallen asleep again, her head in my lap, small hand curled trustingly around my fingers. I stroked her hair gently, the silkiness a stark contrast to Tommy's often unwashed curls from days without shower access. My own body protested every small shift, thin muscles aching from perpetual tension, stomach hollow from skipped meals, skin still chilled despite the heated seats that enveloped me in luxury I had never known. Vincent sat close, his arm around my shoulders, the weight of it both anchor and revelation. The wealth surrounding us intensified with every detail. The soft glow of interior lights, the stocked refrigerator offering bottled water and fresh fruit, the privacy partition sealing us from the driver. His cologne, subtle, expensive, mingled with the leather, a scent of power and protection that made my years of cold wind and empty pockets feel like a distant nightmare and a fresh wound all at once. We had retrieved Tommy safely from the terminal. A kind flight attendant had kept him company, and Vincent's men escorted them through a side door. My little boy now slept against Vincent's other side, exhausted but unafraid, instinctively trusting the man who had promised safety. Seeing them together, my son and this powerful stranger, who was no stranger, tore my heart with increasing violence. Joy at their peace clashing against terror that it could vanish. Confusion at how quickly my destitute world had collided with one of absolute command. Vincent ended another quiet call. Rivals dispersed for tonight. My people made it clear the cost is too high. His voice carried lethal calm, but his hand trembled slightly on my shoulder. Inside him, torment raged at new heights, gnawing remorse for every shadow that followed him, consuming guilt that his rediscovered love, Emily, the girl he had never forgotten, now carried risk because of him. Violent emotional conflict tore deeper. The passionate, burning love, ignited from the first moment, now consumed him entirely, warring against fear that his darkness might eclipse her light. He turned to me fully, eyes fierce in the dim light. Emily, your courage back there, the way you stood ready to protect us. His voice roughened. I've never seen anything braver. I shook my head, tears rising again. My voice emerged soft, timid, polite despite everything. I only did what any mother would, for Tommy, for Sophia. No, he said firmly, cupping my cheek with infinite gentleness. You did what few could, after everything you've endured alone. The words pierced me. Shock and confusion numbed my limbs anew. Dizziness threatened as the psychological upheaval peaked. From nights of cold wind slicing through the car, of rationing cereal until it was dust, of humiliation at food banks explaining why we had no address, to this, loved fiercely by a man whose power could rewrite fates. The disparity was dizzying, painful, yet achingly needed. He leaned closer, forehead resting against mine. I lost you once to circumstance. I searched when I could, but my life pulled me into shadows. Seeing you now, thin from hunger I could have prevented, exhausted from nights I should have sheltered you from, it tears me apart. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and silent. His remorse mirrored my own buried pain. For the girl who once believed in simple kindness, for the woman poverty had worn down to bone. Then, in that quiet, condensed emotional stillness, amid speeding danger, his lips found mine, gentle at first, questioning, then igniting into something passionate, intense, burning. The kiss poured years of loss and rediscovery into one moment. His love, overwhelming from the very beginning, now set free, my guarded heart cracking wide to receive it. I kissed him back desperately, tears mingling, hands clutching his shirt as though he were the only solid thing in a tilting world. We broke apart breathless, foreheads still touching. Sophia and Tommy slept on, unaware. Outside, another brief confrontation flared. A rival vehicle pulling alongside at a red light, windows down for shouted challenges before Vincent's escort forced a lane change and acceleration. Tension without violence, promise of later reckoning. Vincent's phone confirmed final clearance. Compound secure, all threats neutralized for now. The limousine turned into a private drive, gates closing behind us. A sprawling estate emerged, lights warm against the night, grounds vast enough to lose my old life within. Staff waited discreetly. Inside, heated floors, roaring fireplaces, rooms prepared as though expected. Vincent carried sleeping Tommy while I held Sophia. Upstairs, nurseries awaited, stocked with clothes in their sizes, toys, books. My heart tore anew at the absurdity. My children, who had known motel sinks and car seats, now cradled in down comforters. Later, after tucking them in, Vincent led me to a guest suite. Fire crackling, bath drawn, meal waiting. But he paused at the door, torment raw. "Emily, I won't presume. You've been through too much tonight." I stepped closer, voice trembling but sure. "Vinny, I've been alone too long. Don't leave me in the cold anymore." The words broke his last restraint. He pulled me into his arms, kiss deepening into fierce passion, years of separation combusting into desperate need. Clothes fell away gently, reverently. His hands traced my thin frame with aching tenderness, kissing every mark of hardship as though to heal it. We came together intensely, passionately, bodies and hearts aligning after decades apart. Tears mingled with breathless words of love, his burning from the first moment now fully claimed, mine rising from destitute isolation to overwhelming safety. Afterward, wrapped in his arms by the fire, I whispered fears and memories. He confessed shadows and vows. Justice for the plane incident was already in motion. Airline commitments secured, Brittany's actions documented, policies changing industry-wide. But greater justice bloomed here. 2 lost children from the same parish, forging a family from ashes. Outside, rivals plotted in shadows, but inside these walls, love, passionate, intense, redemptive, held the night at bay. And in our torn, healed hearts, the promise endured, never alone again. 6 months had passed since that December night in 2024, when a single act of kindness on a delayed flight rewrote the story of 4 lives. Spring bloomed gently over the North Shore estate outside Chicago, where cherry blossoms drifted like soft snow across manicured lawns that stretched farther than any parking lot I had ever called home. I stood on the wide stone terrace, watching Tommy and Sophia chase each other through the garden, their laughter rising clear and unafraid. Tommy, Once thin from too many skipped meals, once falling asleep to the sound of wind rattling car windows, was now sturdy, cheeks rounded, eyes bright with the confidence only safety can give. Sophia, my sweet little protector in miniature, ran beside him, her braids flying, calling him brother without hesitation. I was still Emily Harper, but no longer the destitute woman who had boarded that plane in patched clothes and hollow despair. Good food, rest, and care had softened the sharp edges of hunger and exhaustion, yet the memory of poverty remained etched in my heart, a quiet knowledge that kept gratitude burning daily. Some nights I still woke, reaching for a blanket that was not there, half expecting cold wind. Then Vincent's arms would tighten around me, warm and steady, and I would remember I was home. Vincent Moretti stood beside me now, his hand resting possessively yet tenderly on the small of my back. Wealth had always surrounded him, but in these months it had taken on new meaning: private tutors for the children, a foundation quietly established to aid families facing eviction, anonymous support for shelters that had once turned us away. His power remained absolute, apex logistics stronger than ever, rival threats neutralized through strategic pressure rather than violence, but his heart had changed. The gnawing remorse that once devoured him for the shadows of his past now fueled relentless good. Every contract reviewed for fair wages, every community near his operations receiving scholarships and medical clinics. Inside him, the inner torment had not vanished, only transformed. Violent emotional conflict still flared when memories of danger resurfaced, but the passionate, burning love that had ignited the moment he saw me shield his daughter now anchored him completely. He had confessed it all one quiet night by the fire, the choices made young to protect his family, the guilt that had armored his heart until I stepped into that aisle, thin, trembling, yet unyielding. My hidden courage had been the final crack, my love the light that poured in. We married in May in the small garden of St. Catherine's Parish, the same church where we had been children. A simple ceremony, Sophia as flower girl in a dress the color of spring sky, Tommy carrying rings on a velvet pillow, Father Michael smiling through tears as he pronounced us husband and wife. No grand display, only promises spoken from hearts that knew the true worth of second chances. The airline had changed too. Sophia's Shield policies, named with her proud permission, rolled out nationwide. Mandatory de-escalation training, child protection protocols, a passenger advocacy hotline answered by real people 24 hours a day. Discrimination complaints fell dramatically. Other carriers adopted similar measures. Knowledge of one small injustice, met with dignity and strategic fairness, had spread into lasting education for an entire industry. Yet the deepest lesson lived in us. Wealth and poverty had once separated us by cruel miles, but love, fierce, colorblind, compassionate, had bridged them forever. Knowledge of hardship made Vincent's generosity profound. Knowledge of privilege made my gratitude boundless. We taught the children both: the lesson of empathy born from want, the education of responsibility born from plenty. Knowledge shaped our daily choices. Lessons guided our parenting. Education became the legacy we built together. Vincent turned to me now, eyes soft with the intensity that still stole my breath. "Are you happy, Mrs. Moretti?" I smiled through sudden tears, tears of joy this time, happier than I ever dared dream. He kissed me gently, passionately, the same fire that had ignited in a limousine under threat, now burning steady and warm in sunlight. Life had taught us hard lessons, but it had also given us this: a family forged from compassion that no circumstance could break. To everyone watching this story on Alex Truths, may it remind you that knowledge of another's pain can spark change, that lessons learned in hardship become strength, that education of the heart is the greatest gift we give one another. Knowledge opens doors. Lessons heal wounds. Education builds futures. We wish you good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Alex Truths, like and share, so others may find these messages too. Tell us in the comments, how did this story touch you? Have you seen love overcome great divides in real life? Share your heart. We read every word and treasure the emotions you trust us with. Until the next video, take care. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.